Hey, everybody. Fascinating conversation today. We're talking about elevating quality engineering with the power of AI with an expert in this space, Mav Turner. Mav, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. I think you're in sunny Austin, it looks like. So I hope the weather is a little warmer than here in Boston. Maybe introduce yourself, Mav. And for those who aren't familiar with Tricentis, what do you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, Mav Turner. I've been at Tricentis for about 2 years now. Prior to that, I've been in various product and R&D roles in software and tech for about almost 25 years now. So, in and out, various roles in the industry. I'm based in Austin, Texas here, and most of the time it is warm and sunny. We would consider it cold, around 50 degrees Fahrenheit here, but you would probably take it compared to what it's like up there. But yeah, we're the leader in test automation, test management, performance engineering. We have a full set of solutions, both for enterprise. So if you're trying to manage a complex ERP transformation in the cloud, as well as product development teams, if you're building an application, mobile app, web app, and you want to ensure you have quality in that process, we have tooling that kind of stretches that entire gamut. And in addition to just the tooling, we also have a lot of educational content. We have a lot of services that help businesses transform, bring more intentional practices to how they think about quality,
Mm.
how they do these transformations. So we have a lot of great stuff just to help people have better results with their IT or product initiatives.
Indeed, you have quite a storied reputation in the space. And, AI, Gen AI, top of mind to everyone these days. So we won't be immune to that. So tell us your perspective on AI and, or maybe a realistic picture of how it's being integrated into business operations and the kind of value it's bringing today
Yeah.
versus maybe in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think everybody's talking about it. Every customer I talk to wants to know what's our AI story. I ask them what
Mm.
their priorities are, and they say AI. They're standing up internal councils to discuss what's the proper use. We obviously have the executive order in the U.S. that just went through. So there's a lot of activity around AI, as we all are aware. And frankly, and I talk to other companies that are just kind of more peer groups than anything, and everybody has got roadmaps that have been changed around what they're going to do with AI. And frankly, a lot of people say we have an AI strategy. Great, what is it? Like, it's
Mm.
to figure out a strategy. I'm like, okay, well, that's a good place to start because we a lot of companies such as Tricentis have been using AI for a while before the latest generative open AI
Mm.
advances. Right, we've been using neural networks, trying to figure out how we can leverage technology to
Oh,
make
wow.
our lives easier. Right, and but with the release of generative AI, and particularly once we kind of hit that 3.5 model and above, 4.0 models on the ChatGPT side, the interaction you get, the natural language interaction, the ability for it to create an engagements to sound like it knows what it's talking about has been kind of captures everybody's imagination. And at a high level, what I'll say is there are absolutely new capabilities, new use cases that have been opened up. However, I would argue that a lot of folks don't really understand the nuances in the technology in a way
Mm.
that allow them to set themselves up for success in that initiative. So, for example, one of the things I talk a lot about is with the generative AI capabilities, that may be a bad solution to your problem. If you have a very contained problem, you need a definite answer. You need a process that's not open ended. Then AI is going to be the wrong tool, and it's probably going to be more expensive. So whether or generative AI specifically, whether another AI solution or other just standard algorithmic approach that gives you that solution is better or not really depends on your use case. And so I'm excited about it. I think it's going to do a lot of cool things, but I also kind of caution and try to manage expectations with folks to say where is it really going to make a difference and how is it going to help. But I can get into all the examples and details you want there because we've been experimenting with it for a very long time. We have several of our solutions have generative AI in production today.
Mm.
We've learned a lot about what to do and what not to do, and again, some of the things that we thought were straightforward or complicated or a lot of surprises. So happy to get into any of that with you.
Fantastic. Well, let's dive in. Many of us, we can see the opportunity, the vision, but what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in adopting AI technology, especially in your context, quality and automation, et cetera?
Yeah. Yeah, I think some of the challenges are it can seem very simple at first. So your first use
Mm.
case usually seems, wow, this is powerful. We're going to make a big difference. And then you look at the details and you look at where it gets blocked, where it hallucinates, where it gets stuck. And then you say, okay, well, we can solve that. And you jump and you solve that. And you jump and you solve this. And all of a sudden, I think a lot of people are expecting it's going to be an easy button. And
Mhm.
again, it makes some things easier for sure, but it doesn't necessarily solve all things. So some of the examples that we've had, particularly in the quality realm, is all right. We can kind of teach it. We can create loops for it to navigate through a UI. We can tell it to generate synthetic data as it's interacting with a form to kind of move through that form. You can give it a little bit of context and prompting in order to kind of get through that application smoothly. But it also can easily go off the rails, follow the wrong link, interact with the application in an unexpected way, which frankly of itself is actually a valuable activity. But if you're not watching that and monitoring it and aware of what it's doing and tracking it, then it's going to be really hard for you to tune and to ensure you're getting the results out of it that you would expect. And so that's one of the things that we've really experienced. And again, we've done everything from we have, I think, probably 30 internal prototypes for the few production use cases that we actually have out. And
Wow.
those first use cases are really quick and easy wins, right? You kind of plug it into your existing thing and you expect everything to be great. But then getting to that next level of production value and production quality in this more continuous space versus a more defined space is really where we see customers struggle, right? And it's been great because it's made a lot of things easier with that natural language interaction. So one of our use cases is a help assistant, right? Ask it a question, it gives you an answer. It hallucinates, it makes up things, it tells you to click a button that isn't there. It forgets what you just asked it about a little bit earlier, so you change the windows. We've run into a lot of really interesting challenges, but I will say, in this example with this kind of chat bot help assistant, we've been able to make a lot of progress and help a lot of customers very quickly. And so we've seen wins beyond just the prototype and beyond just the ideal. Like in production, we're actually seeing a lot of impact it's helping our customers with, and we're doing more and more there. But it is something it needs to be approached with an experimental mindset and that
Mm.
just iteration and looping. I think that's probably my main uh, you know takeaway I would offer to your audience here.
Fantastic. I love it. Experiment and test, 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 pun intended.
Yeah.
You guys wrote the book on your team on DevOps. You're not really known for that. How, give us a state of play of state of the nation in DevOps. Where are we with adoption and best practices? And I guess what's next for, for DevOps and AI kind of
Yeah.
combined?
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, everybody's in a different place in their journey. So,
Mhm.
some people are, fully on this, continuous delivery life cycle. They've got their operations and their development team so together that you can't really tell which one is which,
Mm.
and they're just crushing it, and that's great for those folks. The reality is, most of the customers I speak with are much earlier in that maturity cycle, right? They realize the value of some of the practices and approaches and thinking about working together and the continuous improvement, all of those core concepts, but they don't really know how to implement them. And so that's where
Mm.
earlier I was talking about, yes, we have a lot of products and tooling, but we think it's very important to provide the education and provide the processes about where are you assessing where you're at today and then establishing a plan that's realistic to get to where you want to be and understanding what you're trying to accomplish. I know it sounds like a very basic, project management 101, but if you don't
Mm.
know your goal and why you're trying to do it and how it ties to your executive level objectives, then you're probably not going to see that success, right? If you say, "Hey, we're going to go from shipping once a year to once a day," well, can your customers accept that? Does a business
Mm.
actually benefit from that? In a lot of cases, the answer is yes. But I also talk to a lot of customers that say, whenever you give me an update, my internal change control process takes 3 to 6 months because of the environment I'm in, the regulations, compliance that I'm responsible for. So understanding your customers, understanding what you're trying to accomplish with that, that transformation is really important. And that's where I say, like, again, there's no easy button here. It's going to depend on where you're at. But for me, the key thing is that continuous improvement. Where are you at today? Are you in a better place tomorrow? Whether that's a day, a week, a month, a quarter, a year. That mindset is the key to me for these operations, these improvements. When we look forward to the future of what happens, and I'll broaden the term, in product development teams and software development. Obviously, you see terms like DevSecOps, right? Pulling the security
Mm,
team, like teaming together, and I mean, that's great. That's awesome. You look at other trends we've talked about. We're talking a lot about AI. We have a lot of development teams that are using AI assisted coding, right? So GitHub, a lot of these other features that are in
mm,
the market, and some teams are having a lot of success with that, and some teams aren't, and that will change. Right? Are you reviewing more code than you're manually typing, right, or manually copy pasting
mm.
from other sources online? Um, you know, so we look through the evolution and how we think this industry of what will evolve leveraging AI. Based on what I've seen with my teams and with my customers, I do believe that this assistance of AI, whether it's for development, whether it's for operations, whether it's bringing them together, whether it's bringing in security, I do think will allow us to get more done with less. It will allow us to move faster. But it's not like, oh, hey, great, we can get rid of all the developers or all the testers, and just have one person run everything. It's definitely an assistive technology from what we've seen today. And I think that, just like any tooling, right? You go back every decade and see what tooling we had and how much we can produce, and you can see how much easier it is to produce applications, right? Whether that's your IDEs, whether it's the languages evolving, whether it's infrastructure
Mm.
like AWS, GCP, Azure, all these services, versus you having to stand it up or work with IT. Those things are continuing to evolve in a way that fundamentally are changing how we build products, um, but not really fundamentally changing who we are as you know developers and testers and product folks. But it's the output and the impact that gets magnified, I think, with a lot of these.
Fantastic. And let's talk about output and impact. Are you able to look at any, qualitative or quantitative numbers when it comes to quality, the impact of AI-powered tools on quality, development cycles, or is it too early to kind of generalize, as you suggested?
In some areas, it's a little early. So, like I
Mm,
said, we've seen some of my internal teams' ability to measure how their use of AI
mm,
assisted development has changed things, and we've definitely seen, you know, 10-20% improvement. Nice improvement, but
mhm,
not really game changer there. It makes the developer experience a little better, to be frank. Like, it's
mm,
more of a qualitative reaction where they say, "Hey, this is." It takes things that they kind of more menial tasks kind of off their plate. They can get through things faster, but they're still reviewing it, so their total output hasn't changed like drastically. On the test management side of things, so on the development side, using assistive coding technologies. On the test management side of the house, we see a little bit more of an acceleration, right? We see more the ability to create faster, broader coverage of a test case, right? Some of our test management products have been using AI for several generative AI for several months now to auto
mm,
generate test cases and test steps from requirements, and that
mm,
takes a
nice.
lot of that like menial. Like, I'm just copy pasting. I'm in a UI. I'm trying to write down, taking from a Word doc over here in requirements doc. I'm putting in this thing. I'm waiting for this app to load, and now I got to refresh. And now it frankly just accelerates that part of the process, which
Mm,
isn't where the value add is, right? And what we've seen is that, like, that's about an 8x improvement in our customers, and we see, particularly in the test management, if we literally have a button that says auto generate. How many
mm,
test cases and test steps are created manually, typed in, versus via the AI? About 10% of all of our test cases in one of our products, 8 to 10%, are created via AI. And and then
wow.
we kind of look at the data underneath that, and we see, like, some customers have really adapted it and embraced it and moved forward, and some customers are skeptical, because our philosophy here is it's a very opt-in approach, right? We want to
Mhm,
make sure we're very clear when we're using it, how we're using it, where the data is going, how it's being used. Because that's when I talk to most, customers. Their biggest concern is making sure their data privacy, their internal regulations as those are changing, are all being followed. And so, customers that are using it are seeing this pretty significant, again, assistive technology. They're creating more faster, and they're looking at it, and their job comes to review, which then allows them to spend more time doing exploratory testing and thinking about what is not covered. Okay, we've got the requirements. We're making sure all the functional requirements are covered. We've got our test cases. We've got our test steps. Awesome. Load that up. We'll go through it. But now I can spend time thinking about what is not covered. What did I not think about? And that's really, I think, the impact that we're starting to see and will continue to see in the short term is that ability to spend time on different higher value function ads, because we're taking a lot of the kind of lower menial task off of for the developer and the tester, frankly.
Wow, that's fantastic. More time for deep thinking. Wonderful. Talk
Yes.
about the state of developers. There's a lack of experienced developers, clearly, and not easy to scale up that. How is AI and your solution sort of opening up testing to developers, maybe with less training, less skills, less experience? Is that a phenomenon you see happening?
Yeah, for sure. We see it both on the developer and the tester side. So what our tools
Mhm.
do in a lot of cases is um, allow you to spend less time but get the higher quality, right? And sorry for the
Mhm.
sales pitch, but that's kind of the goal
No,
here,
no,
right?
we love selling here, so
Yeah,
it's an elevator pitch. Yes, that's
there you
awesome.
go. Yeah. And so by doing that, by making these tools accessible and fast and easy to use, you can reduce the time required to write them. So you go back, a lot of what are kind of the legacy solutions? A lot of people are using Selenium. They write a bunch of code. Now they got to maintain it. Now they have new systems, and so customers get frustrated with that. And that's where our value comes in, because there's a lot of times customers will say, I can just do this on my own, right? I can write all this. I can make it work. And I would argue that to a point, but there's definitely a valid statement to say, like, yes, there's a bunch of open source solutions. You can string them together. You can approach it. But then
Mhm.
when you get scale, like the amount of time you're doing carrying and feeding that, our favorite thing is it's free like a puppy. Yes, it didn't cost you anything, but now you got to feed it, take it to the vet, give it shots, and that's great. That's fine. And some people, we all love our pet projects. But when you're thinking about scale, and usually it's usually an engineering leader, director, or higher that's like looking at their team's productivity and how much time they're spending coding tests versus coding their product, or they're looking
Mm,
at um, how do I bring in a more complete enterprise view of what's going on in my infrastructure without having to have my developers run around everywhere, and where can testers take some of that burden on. At the same time, one of the things that I think is a little bit of a misnomer when we talk about things like shifting left, oh, we need to shift testing left. That means pushing the testing on developers. Well, yes, I do think developers should be responsible, not just unit testing. That's somewhat obvious, but the larger functional UI testing. What we're really talking about there is pushing that testing process earlier in the development cycle instead of it being the last stage, right? The whole classic, dev, build, test. Like, let's shift that activity with that still expert tester earlier in the process, so that we can ensure that we find the bugs faster, that we're thinking about how we ensure this thing works while we're building it, and not just come at the end and try to say, oh, are there security issues? Well, you should secure coding practices at the beginning, right? Ability, testability designed into the application when you're building it. Thinking through the scenarios you're trying to support when you're building it. Mocking out quick tests when you're building it, and then that actually simplifies that whole process. So that's a lot of the things that we talk about is how do we address this skill shortage, this gap? Well, it, as a tools vendor saying buy our tools is
mm.
not sufficient, right? You have to change how you're using those tools and what they use. But we do believe, and we have seen it with a lot of our customers, that when they use them, they're able to get more success. Whether that's again a big IT, ERP, or HCM initiative, and you're doing this transformation from on-prem to the cloud, and you ensure that new application is working, or you're building a product and you want to make sure that product development team has easy to use testing, so tooling, so they can spend more time thinking about how they're building their app and testing it versus how to take in the nuances of some specific framework, and then that person leaves, and the next person comes in and has to
Mm.
rewrite the test because they don't like how they're written, and the standard things that happen
Yeah, wonderful insights. Let's chat about the business perspective for a bit. I mean, AI is notoriously expensive in terms of compute. How do your customers look at the cost benefit analysis of using an AI tools in automation versus not? I mean, is there a magical ROI that they are looking to hit, or is it too early to talk about that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we have that conversation a lot internally, and there's a lot of
Hmm.
learnings that we've had. So we believe that yes, training your own AI model is going to be extremely expensive, right? And that's why you
Hmm.
see hyperscalers looking at this. You're seeing larger organizations that can afford to really pour money into the training of the models. However, we found a lot of scenarios and use cases where the usage of it, if you've managed it properly, is actually not super expensive. So it's a manageable cost that you can build in. But you have to really understand how the technology works in the use case that you're deploying it. And I think that's another thing. I've talked to customers that have had. It's actually very similar back to the cloud conversations back 15 years ago. Oh, AWS, right? You push everything there. You didn't do any cost management. All of a sudden, your costs are skyrocketing. It's the same thing happening here in AI. Yes, you can definitely burn money by not using it appropriately, but there's a lot of tooling around. So we're using primarily the Azure OpenAI service, and so
Hmm.
all of the other cost management tooling around Azure services are brought to bear, so we can set in
Mm.
targets and budget management and alerts and good reporting and visibility on the usage of those services. Basically, it's just another service, and so I think there is a danger, just like any service that you're using, and there is a explicit one if you're talking about training your own model versus using something um, that needs to be thought through. The other side of the coin is the vendors that are building solutions on AI. There are real costs associated with it, and so we need to ensure when we're talking with customers and we're providing new services that we're managing those costs. And whether that is something where we have a separate charge for, or we have a fair use limitation that covers 95th percentile usage, so that most customers aren't going to blow us out. And if those couple of users, so me personally, unfortunately, every month my data on my cell phone I get capped. Somehow I got 100 gigs a month on my phone. I don't know what's going. I try to look and figure out what's going on. So I get rate limited, right? So I'm in that top 1-5% of data usage. So for those customers, the ability to kind of ensure that you're protecting yourself as a vendor, so you don't have runaway costs, and then you can help communicate, provide visibility to your customers about where their usage is one strategy to use to manage that cost. But what we're seeing, and frankly, everybody in the industry has been pretty consistent about, is we do need to charge for that because there is a direct cost associated with it, and that direct cost also changes over time. And so it's fair for us to charge for those AI based capabilities. And if you're rolling your own product or service, use those cloud standard best practices for cost management in cloud. And if you're rolling your own AI models, then that's another territory of cost management. But through some planning and thoughtfulness, it's manageable.
Wonderful advice. You touched on security. Let's dive a little deeper into security, compliance, other concerns. Do you have specific tools or products that address security compliance issues when it comes to development, SQA, or is it more about best practices, or how do you view this space?
Yeah, so we don't really have any SCA or products
Mhm.
like that necessarily, but we are most of our products are deployed in a pipeline, and we
Mhm.
strongly recommend that people have their security pipeline full with SAS, DAS, SCA,
Mhm.
all the fun things there. We have been focusing recently a lot on accessibility, so more on the
Mhm.
compliance angle and making sure that if you're building a product, that it's conforming with the right WACG standards. We're going to see a lot of push there coming soon, as far as ensuring that applications are accessible, and we want to create visibility for people. And we think that putting that into that test process is just, whether it's a security test, it's a compliance test, it's an accessibility test, is the right way to think about ensuring your application stays compliant, stays accessible. And there's, the two sides of accessibility. There's the formal requirement, buying purchase requirements, opening up a larger market because more people can use your products and services. And then there's the, like, hey, it's the right thing to do. Like, let's try to build products that are inclusive that everybody can use. And so we're really big on that side, because we think when we have a product that's testing a functional, particularly in a UI, the ability to add that extra layer to check for some of these common things and is fairly straightforward. And so we spend a lot of energy making that as seamless as possible so that our products can help test for accessibility while you're testing for, like, UI functionality, for example.
Well, fantastic approach. So you have so many customers, who's who in the industry are working with you. Any favorite case studies, anecdotes, stories about customers you can talk about without having you to call out your favorite children, but anyone comes to mind?
Yeah, like you said, favorite children. I've got three daughters, so they're all my favorite. Right, so I'm very familiar with the challenge there. There's a lot of them. Look, we talk with Microsoft, and they're a good example where their internal development team got a great case study with them, where they were using Selenium, and obviously they have Playwright internally, and they were looking at how much time their engineering team was spending building, maintaining tests, and at that scale, they could see that they could use a different solution. So moving to a codeless functional automation solution allowed them to really change how they thought about building quality software and ensuring that it's working as expected. You want to speed up time to development. So we've seen a massive. I mean, I think they have somewhere like 1 million test runs a month or some very large parts. And this is like one little team, right? This is not necessarily the
Mm,
whole company. And so that's where some places we have a team that's using us. Some places it's an enterprise wide decision. So we see things like product teams like Microsoft using our product to get rapid test creation. I think when they first started with the tool, they had hundreds of tests written in a couple of hours, right? And they say on
wow.
average it takes them about 20 minutes to write a test. And so they see a lot of value out of using these codeless solutions and helping them move faster. On the other side of the house, we look at some B2B companies that um,
Hmm.
were struggling with their transformation of their ERP systems and had no visibility, and were able to create um, successful programs by leveraging our technology, coming in and really cutting out a lot of the costs and inefficiencies that they were having with that transformation, and actually deliver those projects on time, and actually complete them. I think Dell is one of our big case studies that we see there. Test management across their enterprise, how they get visibility into, is this
Mm,
ready to ship? How do we create awareness across a large global organization? That's another thing that happens a lot, right? The more you look about how we can communicate and how we get real time information across an organization that's running, global, right? That's just follow the sun 24/7. Team comes online. Are you shipping spreadsheets to people? Are you looking at dashboards? How do you make sure these communications are running efficiently? So that's another great. Dell's had a lot of success using our products to accelerate their time to value and create transparency in their process, satisfy audit requirements. So being able to say, did we do these things? Did we follow these checks in our test management practices? We've seen a lot of value there.
fantastic. We couldn't ask for better references than Dell and Microsoft. Shout out to Michael Dell if he's watching. He does follow me, so hopefully
Oh, yeah.
he's going to take note. Maybe, who knows? But what are you looking forward to the rest of the year? With heads down on Q4. Do you have any trips, travel, or events coming up, or just closing out the year?
Yeah, closing out the year, but really more about setting up next year. Fortunately, I
Hmm.
hope we'll be home most of the rest of the year. In January, I'll head back out to Vienna. We have a large site. That's where our company started.
Oh,
Was
that's really tough duty. Vienna is really a tough destination. It's really
yeah,
beautiful,
it's
a beautiful city.
the main thing is my wife's always mad because it's actually one of her favorite cities in the world, and I get to go over there all the time, and she's not so much. So yeah, so head out to Vienna in January. Looking forward to that, and then meeting with some of our teams in Atlanta and Boston later in the month in January. And really, right now, trying to make sure we've got heads down on 2024 planning. We've wrapped that up, but there's always changes. You make a plan, and then you change the plan, and so constantly working on that. But really, honestly, the thing that I've been excited about, and when I think, oh my gosh, we have a month until the end of the year, that seems like such a long time because of how quickly our teams are iterating and developing and taking these
Mm,
learning and every day I'm talking with teams that are all right. Here's our new AI feature, and I mentioned earlier like monitoring and pulling information out of that because frankly it's because it's so open ended and we got to watch it, right? We got to make sure it's not doing something that we don't want it to do, and have a repeat of the Microsoft Tay Twitter bot debacle from almost what was that, six
so you're
seven years
drinking your
ago?
own champagne, is what you're saying with the
Yes,
platform. You're using
yes,
it in house. That's fascinating.
yes.
One day we'll have AI writing AI, so software. So that'll be interesting
We still got to
to
watch it
watch.
though. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a whole nother topic. But do you still code? Do you still write
Very
software?
rarely, and
Okay.
actually, just yesterday, I was just setting up some infrastructure stuff to get some things going, and I was really disappointed at how long it was taking to get everything, the environment set back up and going. I was like, oh, this should have taken 5 minutes, and it's taken an hour just to get things. So unfortunately, I don't get to as much, but a little bit every now and then. So try to get
How
my
do you how
hands
do
on
you how do you how do you describe to your friends and family who aren't technologists what you do? It's a little opaque to say the
it. Yeah,
least. Or
that's
just say software. Is that what you?
so there's a workflow. So oh, what do you do? I'm in software, and either the response is oh okay, and then it's gone, or it's like oh what do you? And then like okay, so test automation, test management, like we're ensuring quality,
No, that's
and
I think that's where it kind of conversation ends. I'm thinking.
yeah, there's like 1% who say like oh well we use Solid like literally this last week, and I was having a conversation with somebody. Tell them what we do, and they're like, "Oh, I use Selenium for." They're like, "Okay, cool." So, and then from there, we go real deep, right? Versus somebody who stops at software.
Okay.
It's fun, right?
Always fun. This has
Yeah,
been super informative, and I think my audience, I learned a lot. So thank you so much for sharing the insights and the unique work you are doing. And reach out, everyone, to Tricentis and Mav with any questions or comments here, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, all the places. Thanks so
yeah.
much, Matt.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for
Thanks,
having me.
everyone.